Next up is a solution to an ecological consequence from a favorite winter sport.
Woo! Sharks, I have traveled far and wide through mountains and snow to be here in the tank with you today. My name is Peter Arlene. I'm from Carbondale, Colorado, and I'm here seeking $250,000 for 10% equity in my company, MountainFlow Eco Wax.
Hey, supers, welcome back to another Shark Tank Tales. I have a super entrepreneur over here that went into the tank. It was season 12, episode. It's eluding me. It was episode 12, wasn't it?
I believe so.
I think it was episode. I'm pretty. I have to pull up the other site that has the stuff while we're talking here. But anyway, he went in to the tank and he got himself a deal. So whatever you're doing right now, I need you to give some super claps on the bus, mowing the lawn, walking the dog, taking a poop, whatever you're doing. Give it up for Super Peter. How are you doing today, Peter?
Joe, I'm so good. Stoked to be here. Thanks for having me. Excited for the conversation.
Me too. I think we had to reschedule. What was it? 3 times? I think because I got sick with the illness, and then my daughter's softball got in the way, and then your kids' soccer got in the way. And I'm telling you, it gets harder and harder to find the time. But I'm so glad that we did. There's so much to talk about because I did. Unlike some of the other past interviews I've done, I actually had time today. I made time today to watch your pitch all the way through and get some of the nuances out that I'm looking forward to diving in with you. But first, as always, let's start with: were you a fan of Shark Tank prior to getting to go on it? You know, how much of a fan were you, if you were?
Yeah, definitely a fan. I loved the show. With that said, I didn't really watch it that much. Like a lot of folks don't have cable, and which I don't. You don't either. Yeah.
No, I mean internet, but that's it. Not cable.
This came to the surface on the day that the show aired when I was like, shoot, how am I going to actually even watch this? But I had watched it enough to like it, and if I was in a hotel or traveling for work, I would throw it on, and it's easy to just go episode after episode. You kind of get in the loop.
It is. And I mean, for me, like we have over-the-air television. I live close enough to Philadelphia that we get over-the-air television, so I get all my Eagles games and like the local news, and then everything else we just either stream or download or whatever. So it's the internet's more important than the cable at this point, and so I sympathize with that. We haven't had cable since like probably 2014 at this point.
No,
something like that. Yeah, it was painful at first because I like watching the Phillies games, and you can't watch the Phillies games, you can't watch the Flyers games or Sixers games. I don't watch that much basketball, but there's times where it's like, I wish I could. So there's like little things like that kind of stink. But I'm guessing you live even further away from a major city to not even have over the air.
I live in the middle of nowhere. So I live in a little town called Carbondale, Colorado, which is about 3 hours west of Denver in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. And actually now live outside of this little town in a smaller town. And so we have satellite internet, which is great unless it's like rainy or windy or like the elk are migrating through. There's like 5 different things which affect the connectivity.
Have you gotten a chance to get Starlink yet? Is that available to you?
It's just starting to become available in our area. So that is definitely on the radar.
Ding, ding. That's good. Though I know they have problems with internet speed once you get too many people on in any particular area, which is kind of, I guess that's just physics. But anyway, so how did you wind up, like, for a show that you like kind of sort of watched when you could, when it was available to you? How did you wind up getting to go on Shark Tank? Did you apply, or did you get the phone call from Shark Tank and say, hey, like we see your product, we see you, we answer some questions, let's go?
I was at a trade show. Our company had a booth. It was kind of the last trade show before COVID shut it down. It was January 2020. It was in Denver. It was the Outdoor Retailer Trade Show, which is the largest kind of action sports outdoor trade show in the US. So ski companies, apparel, snowboard, that whole scene is there. And they had a talent scout there, and we had just launched our marquee product. And so we had some recognition. I think maybe my picture was in kind of the like daily news publication for that event. And so the talent scout had seen that, probably thought I looked goofy with the mustache and the hair. And he never came up and talked to us at the show, but I did get an email maybe a month after.
Wow. And that just goes to show you that you never know who's watching, listening, who's at the, I mean, he might have came by the booth and you did and never even said who he was, right? Like, yeah. Or I don't know, I assume you had more than just you working the booth. So maybe they talked to somebody else other than you, and didn't divulge who they were, what they do, or what the potential premise of why they're there is. And so it's just as entrepreneurs, the super entrepreneurs, we have to always be reminding ourselves that like you never know who's watching. I think that there's a big power there, especially like you could be at a show, or you could be doing a YouTube channel or a podcast, or literally be anywhere, and there's like 10 people watching or listening, right? But they could be the most important 10 people ever that to your life that could totally change your life. Not in your case, it wasn't. It was a month later, but hey, you never know, right?
100%. And another lesson to go along with this is, the email came through, and I'm bringing this up because I just heard another Shark Tank entrepreneur interviewed on a podcast, and they mentioned the same thing. When the email comes through, it doesn't say, Mark Cuban at sharktank.com. It's someone you've never heard of at one of the production companies that's involved with the process. And, you think, well, there's no way that this is real Shark Tank. And so, I was this close to not following it through, but did a quick cost benefit. Okay, what is it going to take me to just respond to this email and see if it's legit? And I did, and it was legit. And that started the process. But someone else said, hey, I thought this was a spam email. And it was the same reaction I had when I got it.
Yeah. I would equate that to like a lottery ticket, right? Like the lottery ticket isn't necessarily about winning. It's about just the idea of you're paying for the daydream kind of thing. Exactly. Like, $2 for a Powerball ticket. Sure. Like, and then you get the little daydream out of it. So you just, you reply, you try not to get too excited because, obviously there's a long marathon of stuff between that email. Even just when the person, saw your stuff at that booth, right. Or knew that you're at that show, like, there's a million other people they could have wound up seeing and forgetting, about you, or misplacing a notebook or a note in their phone or whatever document that had your name and contact information in it. Anything could have happened. That person could have got fired, or quit or moved on. Like, you just don't know what could possibly happen. So the marathon between that to getting that first email to the marathon to actually like getting to go on the show, it's you just got to keep everything in focus, but at the same time, like, it doesn't hurt to dream.
100%.
So, okay. So you start getting through the process and you start thinking like, okay, what am I going to do to, before I forget, you were on episode 12 of season 12.
Okay.
At least according to all SharkTankProducts.com. So you're going through the process. You're starting to build your pitch. How are you balancing as it's starting to look more and more like you might actually get to go on Shark Tank? How are you balancing that with like, family, work, the business, and working on this pitch and preparing to go on Shark Tank?
It's hard, man, because it's a lift. It's a lot. They do a really good job of vetting the candidates and making sure that the businesses are viable and that the entrepreneur is entertaining enough to go on TV. And right, like life doesn't stop because you're trying to get on Shark Tank. And so I just did my best to kind of focus on what I thought they were looking for and spent less energy on stuff that I thought maybe they just had to check the box, because there's a 30-page application and you kind of can get the idea of like, hey, they really care about this section. They don't care as much about, that section, and just try to be efficient with the time.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. There's so many things in life that are just check boxes that are like, why do we have it that, right? And this can go for your business, or government, or producer working with producers in Shark Tank, who are just trying to check a box because it looks good to the next people up, or the lawyers, or insurance purposes. There's all these things where it's like, it sounds really official. It looks like legalese. It probably is legalese. It probably doesn't actually mean what you think it means. And it's like, they just need you to like go through it and know and understand. It's so important that we don't get lost in the idea of the TOSs, right? The terms of service agreements, where it's like, yeah, everybody just clicks agree and we just move on with their lives, right? No, like, how many people are actually reading it? And if something bad happens, there's going to be a news article about it. So some blog's going to write about that terms of service a problem or change up. And then when that happens, then I'll worry about it. But in the meantime, agree. Let's go, right? But I think when we're talking about specifically to our businesses, it's important that we understand like as much of the process as we can to protect ourselves, especially when we have other people that are depending on that money, right? Other employees, team members, family members, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. Like, you can't go whole hog and let other stuff fall to the wayside.
So you're going through the process, you're building out your pitch. How did you land? Like, how did you wind up landing on, like, cause you kind of like do like this walk back and forth thing before you took your goggles off, right? Was
Yep.
that all that like planned out? Were you thinking about that, or was that like, I had the plan and now we're throwing the plan out? Like, I wrote the speech, but now we're just gonna crumple it up and throw. I don't want to throw the books. I actually need these notes. But now we're just gonna go. We were gonna like kind of wing it to a certain extent.
No, that was all part of the plan. And so, wearing all of the ski gear into the tank, we all thought would be fun and unique, and it would kind of set the stage. I walk in and automatically look different than most of the people in there, and they cue into, hey, this is a skier. Plus, like, I don't have dress clothes. Like, I didn't know what else to wear, but I've got a million ski clothes. So I was like, can I just wear my ski outfit? And they're like, sure, that's fine. And I think initially they were talking about getting all of this fake snow in the entryway, and I'd kind of look like I was actually walking through the snow, but it ended up being logistically difficult. So I was like, let's save the fake snow, and I'll just pretend like I'm trudging through the snow. So that was to get there, like, goggles off, like, woo! I've traveled far and wide. See, it's like the pitch is still right there. It's burned into my brain.
I love it. That logistically, I imagine, fake snow would be a problem because of the amount of time it would take to clean that up, and then they only have so many hours in a day and so many hours with the sharks and blah 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 blah, et cetera, things that you probably don't think about when you're like, how do we make this awesome thing? And they're probably like, yeah, that sounds awesome. If you're like the last person like that we're filming it for the season or something, like we could do a deep scrub or something on everything, but so I loved the idea because as Barbara said in the tank, that like, you're the perfect guy to sell it. And I think you showing up in the skiing gear really goes a long way in selling that authority, versus if you had showed up in a suit and tie and talked about how great your product was. You show up as like a salesman versus like your buddy that's like, we're going to go do the slopes. Like, let's go. Like, right. I mean, I know we're in Vegas right now, but like, there's mountains not that far from there's mountains somewhere.
Yeah. It felt authentic. It felt good to me. And I think it came across well on TV.
Yeah. The other aspect of that is when people go in and they're like, oh, should I wear like a t-shirt, right? I think it depends on what feels authentic for what you're trying to portray, and I think that's really key fact there, key idea that if you feel comfortable in your own skin and what you're wearing and what you're talking about, like that's going to go so much further than just showing up to like dressing to impress. You are trying to impress people who are like millionaires, billionaire, and there to mostly tear you down. So
yeah, going in trying to impress those guys, I think, is the wrong approach to take. I think you just have to go in and be true to yourself and feel good about what you're saying and what you're wearing, because they see so many people come through and see so many people in general. Like, you're not really going to impress them. You might make them laugh. That's like, a good start.
Yeah. Speaking of laugh, Barbara had some choice words for you before eventually deciding to give you an offer there in the tank, and obviously you were probably there for 45 minutes plus, I would imagine. I mean, only a couple people I've talked to have been there for like 15 minutes or so. But when you're in the tank and you hear those stories, like what was going through your mind? Like, this lady she's not believing, like
Yeah, I was just kind of smiling to myself, because she kind of talked herself into it as she kept talking. She said, hey, I'm not interested, and this guy looks goofy, and then she just kept talking until by the end of the sentence she said, you're the guy to sell it, and I love this product, and I'm in. So I just sat there and nodded and smiled, and I think she just needed to kind of wrap her head around the whole thing.
Yeah. It sounds like she has, a lot of pride in her skiing ability there, so it's like, oh, this guy thinks he could out ski me. He's showing up in the ski stuff. So when it comes to the mustache, how long have you been rocking that awesome stash, sir?
Oh, years, 10 years.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I've never actually had a mustache. There's like one picture of me with a mustache for all 10 minutes in the mid shaving. Wasn't a big fan of how it came out, but so you're getting offers, right, in the tank. Barbara was the first to jump in, I believe.
I think it was Barbara. And then Kevin.
And eventually Damon offered his 25% if he could get what's the
Lindsey Vaughn.
Lindsey Vaughn. I knew there was a V in there.
Yeah.
Why like you, I know you pushed back on the amount of the percentage and for the amount of money with Damon. Did you what was going through your mind with that? Was that even like was that even a good enough bait on his end to attract you at all? Like, did you really give it a lot of thought?
It was great bait. And for the watchers and listeners who aren't familiar, Lindsey Vaughn is one of the winningest skiers in the world. Certainly in U.S. ski history. She's an icon in the sport. My issue was that she wasn't there to say, "Hey, I love this idea. I'm 100% behind it. These are the things I can do to help support the brand." So for me to make a deal saying, yeah, I'm going to give 10% to Lindsay, not knowing, having her not be in the room, he could have said anyone. He could have said Michael Jordan. I would have said, well, unless I know Michael Jordan's actually interested in supporting this product, I don't want to agree to it. So that was the reason why, more than anything else.
Yeah, it's always interesting when they do things like that where they offer, potentially offer up somebody else's commitment to it, but then also make it a contention of whether or not they would actually want to do the deal, which I guess in my mind would make me second guess whether or not Damon feels confident in the product.
Yeah, right. There's that too. Like, we need to pull in somebody else because the product can't stand on its own.
and that's not good, make for a good partnership going into it. So I think that's a really different way of looking at, like, turning that, like, positive, kind of turning the positive into a negative, because or as a critique to that style of, like, well, if we can get The Rock on board, then, like, I'm all in. Like, okay, well, somebody get him on the. We've seen entrepreneurs go out into the hall and make a phone call. Go make a phone call. Go give him a call. Go give Lindsay a call and see if she's interested, right? If she's not interested, then it just is what it is. So eventually you come back around. They come back around, Kevin and Barbara, and you're at 250,000 for 20%. Trying to meet you. They wanted to, they even offered at one point to go down to 17.5, and you're like, meet me at 16.
Yeah, I kind of had in my head thresholds where I would go in terms of percentage and valuation. And so I was trying to get them into my level. And then eventually they kind of switched up both terms. So they were going to give more money and then take more percentage. And then, the math worked so that it was kind of ultimately in a place I was willing to accept. And to see them, like, go back and forth so much with me and then ultimately meet somewhere that seemed reasonable was like a pretty good step towards a future partnership.
Again, that goes, I think, a longer way there of speaking to the potential partnership versus, hey, I'm in, if this person who's not here and has never heard of you before is in. Or maybe never heard of you. Maybe she has. Who knows, right? We nobody knows, because she's not there and we're not calling her. We're not phoning a friend in, or like, who wants to be a millionaire. So yeah, I think that's a great point. And it did seem like that it took, like, obviously it happens all in a matter of seconds on the show, but it seemed like that might have taken a while for you guys to get, for the Sharks to bend, to get in that realm of wanting to bend at all and meet you in the middle.
Yeah, it certainly did. They kind of went back and forth and were talking amongst themselves, trying to figure out what they should do. I think Mr. Wonderful at one point said, like, a good deal means both people feel a little disappointed. Can't remember if that aired or not.
I don't think so, because that wouldn't fit his persona, but I agree.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that's a good point. That does sound like a compromise. But I kind of stuck to my guns, and they didn't fully come around, but they came around to a place where I felt like I could accept the deal.
Yeah. I mean, my great grandfather always used to say, a hard deal is a bad deal, right? But I think that that doesn't mean negotiating's bad. It just means that you're going back and forth, and it's not necessarily hard, but you both have to be willing to get to a place where you're both a little disappointed to a certain extent, or both really happy. Where it's a win-win at that point, not a one person really wins out on the other, and we've seen that kind of greediness come out in other pitches where they don't bend and they're not interested, and then they just like, oh, did I say 15? I meant 25%. It's funny how I say words and you hear different things, but that is, it is awesome to see that you were able to get that deal. So leaving the tank, how were you feeling, and what were you like mentally prepared to go do next?
I felt great. I mean, I was exhilarated. I was exhausted, physically exhausted, mentally exhausted. You leave the tank and you kind of go right to the post tank interview, and they were just asking me the most simple questions, and I could barely say words. The adrenaline is so real for so long while you're in there that when you leave, it just kind of all drains from your body. So I think we had to do four takes in the post tank interview before I had a coherent response for them. And I don't think that ever aired, which is not a surprise. And then, as soon as you leave the tank, the teams of the Sharks that you made a deal with are right there. So your first meeting is 10 minutes after you get off the set. say, hey, these are the next steps. This is what you should expect from us. And then, after that, I literally went to my room, grabbed my bag, threw it in my car, drove back to Colorado from Vegas. I'd been there for 10 days away from my family and the business. And I was, I think I had another night in a hotel room, but I was like, I got to get home. So I started the 9-hour drive home, and made it home right before midnight.
Wow, that is a long drive there after such a high to come off of, all the endorphins and the stress and everything. And I know that, we've talked with so many Shark Tank entrepreneurs here, and how much you coming out of the tank, it's just like a load is off of you, but then there's like the reality of all the stuff rushing at you really fast, especially in season 12, because you are, have to quarantine for so many days and then be there and then like, okay. So that is awesome. I mean, it's awesome, but like kind of crazy that you just like I'm gonna leave, and I'm gonna not just leave and like get on a plane and like, oh, in 2 hours I'll be home or whatever, but drive 9 hours straight. You didn't stop at all, like you didn't, well, not all, but stop to like sleep or anything?
No, I just motored on home. I was
Wow.
ready to get back.
Well, that is thing worthy, because that is, I mean, we've heard, I've heard people like, I just like went home and like slept, I people that live in LA, when they were shooting in LA, went home and just like slept after that, because they were just so drained from the experience of the rush. And, so that's awesome. So you eventually, you get home, talk about your, what did you have to do in the business to get back into the swing of things, routine and all that?
So we shot in kind of early to mid September. And so it's a little bit of a transition time for us, moving from summer to winter. But, pretty much mid September is in the retail world when ski season starts. Obviously there's no snow, but that's when people start buying stuff. So got back, and it was full steam ahead, trying to get orders out the door, follow up with people I haven't seen, get back on the road traveling, going into shops. So yeah, just right back at it.
That's impressive in and of itself. And then, you did get to be on episode 12, so you only had to wait about half the season to find out that you were going to be on the show, which I know is a big deal. What did you do in preparation to potentially air on Shark Tank? Did you like beef up inventory? Did you work on your website at all? Like what were the steps that you took to make sure that you were Shark Tank or post Shark Tank ready?
Yeah, it's so tricky, Joe, because you find out that you're going to air 3 weeks before it airs, which in our business, and probably most people's businesses, is not enough time to beef up on inventory. And so, you're still talking with the producers, you're talking with the sharks at that point. You kind of have an inkling of like, I feel like I'm going to get aired, or I feel like they didn't really like it. And I was getting the good vibes from everybody. And so I was like, let's go for it. Let's beef up on inventory. Our stuff, it doesn't go bad. And so if we beef up on inventory, we don't get aired, it's not the end of the world. So we definitely beefed up on inventory, kind of focused on products that I thought would resonate with the Shark Tank viewership. We have some products that are really specific and niche, and those probably wouldn't be as popular. But some of our stuff is easy to use. It's like universal, so any snow condition you can use it. So we kind of heavied up on that stuff. And our inventory is actually in pretty good shape for the show. In terms of the website, we put some Shark Tank verbiage on there so that when people were Googling, like they might not remember the exact name of MountainFlow Eco Wax, but they're like, Ski Wax Shark Tank, or like funny mustache guy Ski Wax. So we kind of made sure that like some of those search terms would resonate, and they would get there, and then it would be like featured on Shark Tank, so that they would go, oh yeah, okay, we're in the right place. Like, this looks familiar. I made sure that my face was front and center. So they're like, okay, I saw that guy on TV. Now I see him on the website. I know I'm at the right place. So did a little bit of that. I talked to our, website host to be like, hey, I think we're going to have this much traffic. Is that going to be okay? And they were kind of like, yeah, unless you're going to have like 20 million people, you're fine. I'm like, no. Like, I don't know, maybe a few thousand at one time. They're like, yeah, no sweat, bud. So just kind of like dotted our I's, crossed our T's, and everything went without a hitch in terms of that aspect of it.
Oh, that is great to hear. I mean, I know early on there was horror stories of people like, oh, our site crashed, because we didn't, they didn't have. I mean, do you use the Shopify platform or do you use a different platform? Yeah, I mean, Shopify is. I personally don't use that, but I'm not going on Shark Tank, so it's a different story. It's a different story if you're going to send that level of traffic. They are very well accommodating for that level of traffic for sure, compared to back in the early days of Shark Tank when it was like, oh, they crashed the site and people can't even get to the site. And I want, speaking of your face, I say this all the time on the channel. The power of faces and making sure that faces are prominent so that people can self-identify. And when you're on Shark Tank, you're in the ski clothes, right? That makes sense versus you being in a suit and tie or something that's not you. It doesn't representative of what you represent and how you carry yourself.
Yeah, I mean, in the ski industry, I could have the biggest meeting of the year with a big buyer at a large retailer, and I can show up with a collared shirt, but it better be a flannel shirt. If it's like a normal business shirt, they're going to give you a sideways glance, right? Because kind of the whole thing is, hey, I'm a skier, you're a skier. Like, now we're business people, but first and foremost, we're skiers. And that's kind of how the deals get done. So it just wouldn't have worked to wear anything more than that.
Yeah. You literally are living where skiing happens, like middle of nowhere. We're not, I guess you're not given the vibe of I'm the weekend warrior, like maybe 2 or 3 times a year I go skiing, or once a year we do our family ski trip or whatever, and everybody's got their like cardigans or whatever. I don't know what people wear that are of that class, and skiing, because I personally have never been skiing before. Maybe sometime in the future.
No, you got to go. We'll get you the wax. It's going to make all the difference.
I bet it. I imagine it will. I mean, I live not that far from the Poconos. I live about 2.5 hours from the Pocono Mountains, so that's a pretty good skiing place. It's just never happened for me. I never had friends that were like, "Hey, let's go skiing," and I wasn't going by myself. I've been up there. I've gone tubing up there, but never skiing. So maybe at some point in the future, the not too distant future, we'll make that happen. But. So you get to. So did you do a watch party for your Shark Tank airing, or what did you do?
Yeah, so the first time I watched it was via FaceTime, because my mom lives back east, and so it airs an hour earlier. And so watched it via FaceTime with her, just to like be brief, because like you don't know what segment they're going to show of you or how they edited it. And like, if I look like a doofus, I kind of want to know before my neighbors in Colorado watch it live. You know what I mean?
Well, all 30 of them?
all 30 of my neighbors, and mostly the elk. And so I watched it, with her. She had a viewing party with some relatives back east. Watched it, was stoked, and then had another viewing party actually with my in-laws who live in town, and they have cable. And so we were able to watch it with them, and it was, it was small, but like my phone was blowing up, and it's really fun, like as you would expect. It's a fun night.
Yeah, I imagine it would be a fun night. So So okay, so everything goes smoothly with that. Sales, or they went. You actually got sales out of that night, or because it aired when, I don't know what night did this air.
February 8th.
Oh, it's February. Okay, so it kind of stinks that they didn't get you a little. Yeah, February. Well, it's February 5th is according to this
February 5th.
site.
Okay.
But it kind of stinks that they didn't get you a little sooner in the ski season there.
Yeah, that's kind of like still a pretty popular spot because it's right before winter break and spring break, which are big ski times. And so, I mean, we saw really good sales the night of, a Saturday after for like people who were streaming it, and then really for a whole month, our sales were pretty elevated.
Oh, that's all. That's great to hear. So afterwards, you're going through the due diligence. You're dealing with two sharks, which, I mean, I haven't talked to too many people that have talked about the experience of getting to work with two sharks, but closing the deal with two sharks has got to be kind of complicated, I would imagine. So can you speak to the deal? Have you closed? Or are you still in due diligence all this time later, or what's going on?
Yeah. So worked with the Sharks teams, which were great. Super smart people. They've done a lot of deals. They know what they're talking about. It does make it difficult when you have two Sharks because they both have their kind of standard term sheets that they like to use. And then there's certain terms from both that they want in there. So ultimately it's one deal, right? You're not signing two deals. So they put the term sheet together. So it's one deal. But you get a lot of clauses in there because, again, you're working with two teams and two Sharks. And so, at the end of the day, we didn't end up signing the deal. We did like a good faith negotiation. We kind of went back and forth for a while. And I had things I wanted in there and they had things they wanted in there. And we almost got there. But in the end, we just, we parted as friends. I think, no hard feelings, certainly from our side. And hopefully on their side as well.
Hey, it does. It happens more often than people realize that, the deals don't always get to go through. But, I think getting to go through that process is probably really invaluable. And especially going forward, if you did take on other investors and such, like how much better off are you getting to go through that experience than prior to it?
Absolutely. You get to see exactly what investors are looking for. And this is, the best of the best for investors. So if you can get your books in order and present it in a way where the Sharks will accept it, you're in really good shape for anyone else that you might work with in the future. And it's just good to know kind of what they care about, like, hey, we're not as concerned with net revenue. We're more looking at top line. Right? Because you're a new business and we want to see that growth year over year. And sure, eventually you'll become profitable. Or we're really looking at like, what's your inventory turnover? Like, we don't want to take on a ton of inventory risk. So you just get to understand where their head's at, which was really insightful.
Yeah. Because everybody, everybody does business differently, and they do weigh different things differently based on their past experiences. Where they got burnt, probably where they got burnt, or where they had success, and trying to do more of what works. So it's, but yeah, like going back, it definitely, I'm sure, is difficult when you have that many hoops that you're trying to jump through to get to a common ground to land two sharks. Makes me wonder about those deals that had like 3 or 4 or 5 sharks in it, and how so you see his eyes, everybody. It's gotta be so crazy to have to digest and work through, to make make everybody happy and create a win-win situation for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, the more people that you have in there, the more partners, more stakeholders you've got to account for.
Yeah. So since that, so when actually, how long did that process take before you guys came to an agreement to not come to an agreement?
Probably 2 or 3 months after it aired. I mean, we had been talking up to the airing, and then when it airs, kind of the deal discussions ramp up a little bit, right? It's now real. Like it's out in the world that we're supposedly working together, and so that's kind of when we really got into the due diligence, and then maybe 2 months after we decided not to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I know that other past entrepreneurs, Shark Tank entrepreneurs, have talked about like utilizing Shark Tank as a proving ground as well for like, yeah, like it's great, like you got sales. It's not that you got no sales, but like let's see how well it does, with Shark Tank's help, and then decide from there if it's worth it. But I also know that from other Shark Tank entrepreneurs that like sometimes so much time passes that the business changes or grows so drastically, or doesn't grow drastically. Things just change in one way or another that like the deal that you made no longer makes sense. Like 6 months after the fact, it just becomes such a different company, or so much bigger, or so much smaller, or so much more diverse. Than the initial, like when nobody knew that we were there except the Shark Tank team and them and us.
Yeah, I think for us it still more or less made sense. When we presented our financials to them before we even filmed, you give them a projection of where you think you're going to go, and we had some pretty aggressive growth goals. And 6 months later, after we aired and we're doing the negotiations, the company was way bigger than when we first started talking, but it was kind of where we had told them we were going. So I think the deal still made sense. If we look back now, it wouldn't make sense because we've expanded our product line. We're now doing bike products. We're doing eco-friendly ski poles. We've got all sorts of other stuff that we're working on. But at the time, I mean, that part of the deal still did make sense.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, things grow and change because it's not in a vacuum, and you're not just like, oh, great, I got the deal on Shark Tank. Like, let's go home and just sit on our hands for, however long it takes, and do nothing until. I mean, I've heard stories of that happening, but by and large, you want to, jump on that opportunity, get reinvigorated, and go after it and make it bigger. And my UPS battery is beeping. I don't know if you can hear that. So, all right. So you said you grew the lines for the business since then. What's the future looking like going forward?
Yeah, so I mentioned it briefly, and for those who aren't familiar with the brand, MountainFlow, what we went on Shark Tank with was a plant-based, non-petroleum ski wax. Most ski wax is made from petroleum. Whatever you put on your skis goes into the snowpack. That ends up in the local watershed. Essentially, ski wax works by coming off your ski. And so we came up with a plant-based, biodegradable ski wax. That was our pitch. There you go. Look at that. Actually, it's a brand new picture on the website. I love that. And so now, in addition to doing ski wax, we're also doing bike lube. Bike lube is the same story. Most of it's petroleum based. We came up with a plant-based alternative that we think works just as well as the petroleum stuff. And then kind of the most recent launch that we're actually coming out with next week is a ski pole made from recycled aluminum. So same strength and weight as a typical ski pole, 95% fewer carbon emissions. So that's kind of our shtick all around. There you go. Those are the ski poles. They look beautiful. They're, really sustainable. Joe, when we get you out on the slopes, we're going to have you with the wax. We're going to have you with the poles. Now I'll just have to make some ski jacket for you as well.
Yeah, man. I need this. I mean, this is awesome, and perfect timing too, because I actually, since getting the illness back when we talked, I've been able to lose a ton of weight and have been getting back into my running routine and stuff like that. So I might actually be in shape to be able to do anything involving slopes and or skis.
Love it. Good for you.
Thank you. So So, all right. So everyone can go to mountainflow.com to get their wax, to get their bike lube. Is that what you're calling it? Bike lube? Yes.
Bike lube. Yep.
And ski poles, and you got hats too.
We got hats. We got this one here. We got a few others on the website.
Hot dog
most
hat.
of them are sold out. The hot dog hat is our best seller.
Really?
People love that hot dog hat.
What's the story behind the hot dog hat?
So back in the 80s, if you were a really good skier, kind of the highest compliment you could get was someone calling you a hot dogger. So that's like you're the best skier on the hill, you're a hot dogger. So this is a hot dog. Condiments are the ski track.
I see
so
that.
Your
I see
ketchup and
that.
mustard kind of wiggling on down the hot dog.
I thought it was bacon, but I guess it's
Oh,
not.
it does look like bacon. It can be bacon. Maybe we can make a Philly cheesesteak version for you.
Hey, now you're talking my language. That's yes, absolutely. Speaking of that, one of my favorite places in Philly, Jim's Steaks on South Street. They had a fire and they haven't been open since. And yeah, I mean, I've been there at like 2:00 in the morning to get cheesesteaks. It's always cheesesteak time there.
Okay, I'm gonna put that one in the back of my brain next time I'm in Philly. Jim's.
Yeah, well, let me know when you're here in Philly. We'll go get cheesesteaks, man.
Done.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming here on the show, Peter. I'm glad we were able to get it and able to fit it in both of our schedules. If you're yeah, I'd love to have you on the show again. Just like a year or so, we'll catch up and see how things are going. That was funny. Catch up.
Hey,
yeah, well, catch up and mustard, right? So, thanks again, Peter. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, hey Joe, this has been great. My pleasure. Let's definitely circle up in the year, and maybe we'll do like a live one somewhere in the Poconos on snow.
Let's do it. Let's make it happen, man.
All right, done.
Thank you. I appreciate you watching all the way to the end here. If you haven't seen Peter's pitch, check it out up here. If not, I'll see you in the video down below. Take care and go be super.